Alright, welcome back to another Embrace Destiny video, KAZ PhD live stream, everybody. Welcome back to our fourth video in the KAZ Learns About series. If you are not familiar, basically we play Destiny or whatever we want, and we have people from our community come in and share something they're passionate about or interested in. So if that's something that you would like to do, check out the links in the description of the video below, and you can sign up in our Discord, and we can fit you in. We usually like to do these Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is also 9 p.m. UK time. Today we have our special guest, DancingViru, who I hope I can just call Viru, because I like to shorten everybody's names. And we're talking about a really fascinating topic today that I know very little about, which is autism in narrative design. Welcome, Viru. Are you guys ready to jump into some strikes?
Yeah.
All right. So while we do that, Viru, thank you very much for joining. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to talk about this topic?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Viru. I just turned 31 a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yes. Happy belated.
Thank you. I live like maybe 40 minutes away from you.
Yeah, and yet we haven't had a chance to meet up. Although ironically, I'm now 40 minutes plus 6 hours away from you.
Plus, yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually quite fun, like learning about that we're like this close. Yeah, I live in Basel in Switzerland. I was born here. I'm autistic. I got my diagnosis when I was 24. And yeah, so the reason why I want to talk about autism narrative design, it's very, very interesting for when we talk about interests and hobbies about from autistic people, because for autistic people like us, hobbies and interests are more than just what they are for other people. It is our comfort zone. It is where we thrive best mentally. Hold on, I have a... Oh, never mind. Just got a notification. It's where we thrive the best, and it helps us cope. And anything that deviates from that hobby or interest field, it's rather like similar to like translating from one language to another. If we have to interact with anything else. And there's like different kind of thresholds for each autistic individual. It is also difficult to like explain what is autism. That is also different for every autistic person. The rule of thumb is they're like very ableist approach about autism that we're trying to avoid. Because unfortunately, like with most things, a lot of things that is available about autism and the research has been established by non-autistic people, which is frustrating. But at the core sense, it is a neurodivergent disability. It is disability for not necessarily disorder. There might be co-depending disorders that comes alongside it.
Okay, so let me. We got a lot of ground to cover on this one. So let me back you up a little bit. Okay, so you're diagnosed at 24, right?
Yeah, which is quite a late diagnosis.
I was gonna say. I mean, so what? Okay, first of all, what led to that? If you don't mind me asking, like, were you noticing something or not noticing something? Like, what led you to kind of, to get yourself checked out? I may need to bring the game sound down a little. The perils of using Xbox Party Chat. Alright, hold on a second. But yeah, so what, let's try this. Chat, let me know if that's better. Okay. Yeah, so Viru, let me know, like, what led to that? Oh no! No! Oh, okay. Hey, there we go. Can you hear me, Viru? Okay, it took him a minute to connect last time, so let's check. Oh boy. Well, we may have to switch over to Discord after all. Viru, can you hear me? Nope, we cannot hear you at all. Six, can you hear me?
If I'm not on mute and I am through them.
Yeah, but Viru, we cannot hear you, but Six, do you have the ability to go to Discord if we have to?
Yep.
Okay, Viru, would you rather go to Discord? Do you think that'll work better? Alright, hold on a second. I'll message him.
This is what happens when you have a live stream. You get chat. What hit is that?
Well, I mean, he was with us for a good solid 15 minutes before before we kind of started the whole event. But that's all right. We'll get ourselves started here. He's messaging me now. But yeah, Chad, I want to walk through this with him because I want to make sure I understand the journey correctly. Hold on a second. Please join. Okay. I don't know what that sound was, but Six, we're gonna jump out of here and we're gonna go over to the stream, the voice channel in the stream, okay?
Yeah, I'll be there in a second. Just
Yep.
get my headset set up.
Alright, chat, hold on a second. Let's navigate over there. One moment. Hello, hello, Viru, can you hear me? Check, check. That's weird, we're both here, and yet I can't hear you. That might be on my end, hold on a sec. Oh, actually it is on my end, hold on. Alright, try again. Yeah, I had, remember when I had to turn my volume down so that it wasn't reverberating back through my computer? Well, now I have to turn it back up so I can hear you. There we go. Alright, no. Alright, go ahead and try saying something again, make sure chat can hear you.
Yeah, hello, test, chat, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think they can.
Yeah.
Okay, alright. Nice. Okay, Six will join us here in a moment, I'm sure he's just getting his... Hey, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
We're all here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, like, suddenly, it just, like, my Xbox app stopped interacting, like, I couldn't even, like, leave the party chat.
Yeah, like, I like the fact that there is an app, but it is not great.
That's
unfortunate. Right. Okay, so we're here. The last question I was asking you was, you were diagnosed at 24. What led to that? What led to that diagnosis? Like, is this something? I'm really curious to know. Like, was something odd going on? You needed to check out, or you were looking into something completely different, and this came up. I'm curious about that. if you don't
Yes.
mind.
So yeah, no worries. So the thing is, for those who don't know, I am like disabled for work. I'm unemployable for the unforeseen future. And I had to drop out of school. And what led to that was I missed a lot of class. Missed a lot of classes. I was absent a lot due to health issues. Different kind of health issues. I had migraine ones. I get very dizzy a lot. There's also asthma, which doctors found my response to asthma is also very unusual. It's like I'm like super sensitive. And the thing is, there was like never a way to confirm what my problem was. Until the topic changed to what's happening, at home, or just school in general, if I feel stressed. And back then, I honestly couldn't like really understand what stress means. It turns out I was stressed all the time, so that was just a normal for me. So that's why I couldn't understand what stress means.
Yeah.
And they explained it to me, and at first I was sent to get tested for it's like a psychological test for burnout. And yeah, I did have burnout. It's specifically psychosomatic burnout. So something's mentally is going on, and it manifests as like physical illnesses, different types.
Right.
The first one was migraine, which I had during my childhood, and so I had like a different type of therapist, and until I had like a regular one when I reached like adulthood. And the problem was because I dropped out of school, the plan was to like get figured out what my issue is, and I had like some like an assignment where I had the opportunity to like restart my school career, so to speak. Here in Switzerland, you have like so many opportunities to do that, especially in Basel. Like our educational system is quite complex, but also interconnected. And however, it turned out that there's much more going on than just something like a depression or anxiety. Just to be open about this, I did experience parental abuse. One of the main reasons why even our like welfare program assisted me in finding my own apartment where I live in right now, which changed a lot. Eventually, it led to just a suspicion from my old therapist that I might have Asperger's. I will get to that diagnosis later on, to the Asperger's syndrome. That is a historical diagnosis. It doesn't exist anymore like in that way, depending on where you live. And I got tested for that. I do not have what you would traditionally call Asperger's syndrome, but I was positive for autism, and after we got some clarification from an expert what that means, everything I've went through suddenly made sense. I am very sensitive to like stimuli that I don't want to experience. A very simple example, but very grave one, is if I go to shopping The car sounds, they're too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sunlight can be too much, especially during summer times. We tried like just to wear, sunglasses, but the sensation of wearing sunglasses can also be too much. And that is essentially, it is different, and it has like a different threshold for each autistic individual. But it is mostly about um, how we have certain sensitivities to specific types, so multiple types of stimuli, and that is usually the main reason why when we're children we seem like we can't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Yeah, you're
main
just
issue is
overwhelmed.
yeah, exactly. The main issue is just we're too overwhelmed to react, and that's why I mentioned the interest in the hobby field earlier. If for a kid, for example, for an autistic kid, playing Legos is their comfort zone, that might be playing Legos might be the only way for that kid to actually pay attention to what's going on around them.
Mm.
And that's it's about having other people's like accommodate to their interest and like basically enter their world. Because that's the best way for them, where like things cannot get overwhelmed. We still have like very minuscule, battery, like social battery, and you can find that on the opposite side of the spectrum as well. Like we have extrovert, like there are extroverted autistic individual as well. Like one hobby / interest field for an extroverted autistic individual might be, for example, partying. It might seem like that person is a very, like outgoing person. But it is possible that, partying is the only thing that they enjoy in life. Or it's the only way they can interact with other people. And outside of partying, they're like rather secluded, out of comfort, not out of shame or whatever. And so yeah, that's essentially how it led to my like late diagnosis. It is very difficult to get a late diagnosis because on one hand, yes, everything makes sense, but on the other hand, there's also this sense of grief in a way, because you've accumulated so many experiences that essentially goes against your mental health, and you need to learn like to unmask all of that. And masking, that is like a concept that U6 and Tower Mom explained with your conditions. What was the dream about the game you played, KAZ?
Yeah, that was back when we played Hellblade.
Hellblade. Yeah, and that is like the grieving part, because you spent more time learning how to be normal than how to be yourself. So it is very difficult to like unlearn these habits that seem to be normal, for other people, but goes actually against your mental health.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like anything, right? Like if you, I don't know, if you only learn, like, very simplistic example, but if you only learn to play power chords on the guitar, if that's all you know, and you're quite good, but it's all you know, trying to learn otherwise, you're gonna actually struggle. Not only because it's difficult, but you might start to go, well, now I'm worse than I was. And it's hard to convince yourself that if you push through, you might end up being better or feeling better than if you relied on the crutches or the masking, I guess, that you've established, right? It's like that with anything. So I would imagine it's even more pronounced with like anything psychological and anything later in life as well, like you said.
Yeah, and something that's mentioned in the chat, a lot of people tend to like not believe that when someone like introduces themselves as autistic, and that's mainly because we spend more time learning how to mask, well, unwillingly, than learn how to be ourselves. and it is also like it's such a gift if you're aware of that. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know you're autistic, that is it's very difficult. Like it can affect everything from like normal mundane things like brushing your teeth every day and being confused about how everyone can brush their teeth like it's nothing, while for you it's very difficult sensation to feel, to relationships, to wondering why someone, despite feeling sexual arousal, doesn't like sex because it's just too much. There's too much going on neurologically. If you think about it, that's quite a lot of sensations going on. Sometimes it might be too overwhelming. And for me personally, I found out when I'm in a room with more than 4 people, I will have trouble focusing, and that's too much. That's like too many uncontrollable stimuli. So the school system with the classroom setting was just not fit for me.
Oh yeah.
Well, like not at all, and which is it is kind of sad because I used to be like I used to be like an ace in classes, in various classes, but it degraded over time, and I also wasn't like necessarily an ace for healthy reasons. I basically like stressed myself out. Unfortunately, that led to a misunderstanding where people thought I have it easy with learning, when like no, I just like stress the crap out of these learning materials. And,
I make it look easy, but it is not.
It is absolutely not, and it's also, teachers. By the way, I originally went to study to become a teacher. The thing with every teacher has their own like teaching method, and these teaching methods they work for like a specific subset of people, but not for everyone. And it's also a little bit weird to expect of a teacher to manage an entire classroom and assess their well-beings, if they're fit, if they're in the right mood to learn, and just assume that they have to manage that for themselves. And it is quite a lot to there's like multiple aspects about this that leads to the problems of what like autistic students and people, or like neurodivergent people in general, have to face. And
because like even if and do step in and correct me if any of the language that I use is a bit off, but like even if you're dealing with just 30 individuals with seemingly no challenges of concentration or like ability to handle input. I mean, I learn differently than you learn, and we learn differently than 6. And it's like, how do you, like, in general, how do you, as a teacher, how do you manage that? Like, we've got 12 people in the stream right now, and if I wanted to say something that would be understood clearly by all 12 people, I'm probably not going to succeed right away. That's kind of why I repeat myself and try to explain in different ways. And so when you compound that by people who have different filters or different abilities to handle input, who process information differently, like, in general, teaching is a really difficult profession, and in a way, by the way that it's generally designed in most countries, it's kind of doomed to fail. It's like
it's also and this intersects with what I mentioned earlier about how Asperger's is a historical diagnosis. The school system it's unfortunately like a byproduct of a relic from like totalitarian systems.
Yeah.
And if for people who are wondering who don't know, Asperger was a Nazi supporter. It's something that's mostly overlooked. He was a supporter of the Nazi regime, so you'd have to think twice. Like you have to take a second to like think about what a Nazi supporter would consider someone as autistic.
Right.
Essentially someone who is like not easy to bend. Essentially, and it is it is very tough to even advocate for ourselves because of things like that.
Yeah, like sorry, this is random, but I think I heard I think I heard that the first. Ah, dang, I'm gonna lose the details on this one. I heard about how like one of the first studies for, and I can't remember exactly what type of condition it was, but like it's a condition that we've been hearing about for like a decade, and then apparently like the first real clinically like studied approach had been done like last year, and I'm like, why last year? What took you so long? Like we've been talking about this, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but I can, just by what you're saying, I can see how, like you said, a lot of it is defined by people who don't exist within that spectrum, and a lot of the systems were made like archaically, like you said.
Yeah. And for people who follow me, you might like see that if you look at my name, I have something like like next to my nickname says #ban ABA. ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, and it's a therapy, and I'll say therapy in quotation marks. Applied Behavior Analysis Therapy was established by the same person who came up with the conversion therapy. ABA therapy.
Indicator to get rid of it right there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically like it's the autism version of a conversion therapy. It's the belief that you can, like, through therapy, you can turn an autistic person into a non-autistic person, which that's not true. That's not how our brain works. That's
a pretty simplistic viewpoint.
Yeah, and it's a very harmful therapy practice. And like in some countries, it's forbidden now. There are horror stories still happening in the States. There's like an extreme variant of that where like ABA therapy, it's like it's basically like a reward oriented, which is already disgusting. Basically, if an autistic child doesn't behave like a normal child, they will be like emotionally neglected, like even like ignored. And there was like one case where a child was punished for not putting their like raincoat on time because they took too much time. Because they didn't realize that the sensation of wearing a raincoat was a bit too much for them. And there's a horror equivalent of that. It's actually legal for one clinic to use shock therapy, which is terrible. There's especially one clinic that made the headlines last year. Because the ban appeal was disregarded, and so they can continue to do that. It is just terrible. it's funny enough. Like the first doctor who came up with autism. He was, by the way, he's from Switzerland. I forgot his name, but essentially, the terminology autism, it basically means selfism,
Hmm.
and he like basically said like he didn't like actually specify that autistic individuals have to like become normal. It's more like their environments needs to be adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually like one of the first like actually like accurate observations. Unfortunately, misguided by those who came next.
Mm-hmm.
And does anyone has anyone heard about Autism Speaks? Um,
Anybody in the chat? I have not.
I don't know why.
Uh,
um, Autism Speaks is an organization that was mainly yeah.
oh, okay. It's an unfortunate thing, and some people have heard about it. All right.
Yeah, for a very long time, Autism Speaks was the main organization that was claimed to advocate for autism. The whole time it was against autism.
Mm.
There was like a terrible like a marketing video they put out, which they've taken down. But in that marketing video, they like it's like very ominous music, and the narrator he talks about an autism like it's the villain of society, with like phrases like, "Are you tired of having to divorce because of your child?" Um, Things like that, where basically
Oof.
the comfort of parents from autistic children are prioritized and not the autistic individuals themselves. They're the ones
Wow.
who preached ABA therapy, and they're the one who came up with the whole light blue for autism in April. They said April is back then it was called Autism Awareness Month.
Oh my God.
Um,
This is like
uh,
this is like a systematic approach. Like every pillar, every direction, is like the enemy. Like some of the early people like looking into this treat it as like an other syndrome. Like they're not
yeah.
looking at it like, oh, this person has a problem, let me help them with their problem. They're looking at it like society has a problem, let me help get rid of this problem. And
Hmm.
then and now like that's amazingly
Yeah, it's
horrible, like that even like this, because now I'm sure there's a lot of people who I always describe. I often describe people when it comes to opinions or empathy. I describe them on a spectrum between like 1 and 10, where like the 8 to 10 are, let's say, pure allies. Great, everything's great. And the like
yeah.
1 to 3 is like just pure enemy, like the trolls that will never, never concede. And then I think a lot of people exist in that middle part, uh, and they can be swayed by experience or information or whatever. And it really sucks that I'm sure there's a lot of people who should be in the ally camp, but they had a lot of bad experiences with this, like with a group like this, and now they are leaning far closer to the trolls. And not that they're getting hoodwinked by a horrible organization is an excuse for them to be terrible, but it sucks that there are forces out there that are moving people in that direction, um, especially when they're supposed to be, or at least on paper, they're supposed to be like an advocate for, people, for that community. You know what I mean? Like it's I mean, I'm not surprised, but I am. I am just shaking my head at the audacity of it, I guess.
There is a large group of organizations that help promote organizations like that because there's no money in cures. There's no long-term benefit in a cure for them, right? But there is in coming up with things that treat something but don't cure it. So you keep churning out these organizations that tell you it's something that can be fixed with just more money. You keep making money.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the reality of it is, you know, why is it in so many countries in the world you have to pay for a life-saving medicine for a child with diabetes, and it's a ridiculous price.
Right.
Why?
But on top of that,
why are you even paying for it?
on top of that, it sounds like the there are aspects of this organization that are also. It's like joining an advocacy group so you can control the narrative, right? Or that you can control the direction of that help. It's like, oh, you don't get that help. Oh, but you do. You know.
Yeah.
Parents of instead of the children of,
Funny that you mentioned that. There's another problem with the currently existing diagnostic module for autism. It's so, I mean, as most things, it's so heavily like white male biased. There's so many like autistic girls, women, and non-binaries who live their life like undiagnosed, mainly because they don't have like enough data to even determine that.
Yeah, I'm thinking like even in the depiction of media, it's generally like white men who I'm thinking of two examples. One of them I won't name because it's a fine bit of comedy sometimes, but most of the time it's not. But even like the show Atypical is about a white male who's on the spectrum. And sorry, that was just that was an interesting point. That I mean, I wasn't, again, not surprised that it's like white male driven or oriented, but I was thinking, even in media, that's what we get.
Mm-hmm. But just like a problem, because that is like another reason why my case, like why I went undiagnosed, because doctors in Western countries, they don't have enough by design, not enough data and experiences on what it feels like. Just as an example, my parents, they're from Sri Lanka, and they are refugees. There was a civil war in Sri Lanka, and which obviously affected my childhood and the way they were parenting. And if you don't have like these kind of data, doctors would like never think about diagnosing someone with autism.
Which is
because they don't even know what's the autistic and non-autistic experience of someone who had a refugee upbringing. Right. So
So okay, before we go any further on this, I mean, I want to just talk about the scope of our conversation, because the title that you brought forward was Autism in Narrative Design, but and I'm sure that half of the conversation or a part of it's going to be talking about narrative design, but I just want you to know, feel free to continue outlining the autistic experience, and you can guide the direction of the conversation however you please.
So I picked that topic because I actually had a very like tough time like deciding what I want to talk about. So I just like chose the concept of what I'm interested in. Because as I mentioned earlier, autistic traits are for autistic like hobbies and interests are for autistic individuals more than just hobby and interest, and so I just yeah, like autism and narrative design is a very fascinating topic for me personally, because I am mostly interested in narrative design of video games and TV shows. I am mostly interested in, and including, you know, Destiny, and it also, you know, fits the whole spiel about, you know, information management and how, you know, as a teacher, or generally as someone who provides information, how you can basically like redesign the information you want to convey, so that it's more easily understood for an autistic audience.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
yeah,
you know, we talk about narrative on this stream quite a lot. Maybe not in terms of design, but in terms of, you know, goals and things like that. So I guess on that front, like, on a high level, what are some considerations, or what are some differences or that come up when you look at narrative design, but from the autistic community perspective?
So before I answer that question, I have like a question for chat and everyone in general. It's not a trick question. It's more like just to like make sure we are all on the same page. Do you all know like what the difference is between art and design?
Ooh.
Or can you like explain in your words the way you think the difference is between art and design?
I'm gonna get in trouble on this one, because I have really good friends who are designers. I have really good friends who are artists. My fiance is an artist, but I'm STEM, baby. So I'm not quite in either art or design.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like, personally, and this is like just like, this is a weak answer, but I see design, like, when I think of design, I'm thinking of my friends who are in like graphic design or you know, UI design or things like that, and from that perspective, design seems to be I don't want to use the word in the sentence, but it seems to be a process of directing information or usage of things. Like when I think of design, I think of like, well, this physical tool is designed in this way because most people are right-handed, so you're manipulating the structure of the physical piece to fit with the, you know, the user or whatever. And you can see that in like code, and you can see that in like, I don't know, how many things are designed. They have a purpose, they have an audience, like an end user that they're focusing on. And so, whereas art, I feel like art, like very high level, what is art? Oh god, here we go, KAZ. But for me, I would say that art generally serves one of two purposes. One is just to express emotion, and another one might be in communicating something. And there's probably a crossover, because you communicate stuff with design. You communicate the information that needs to be communicated in order to use the whatever you're talking about. But I feel like art is there's a difference in that communication. Anyway, those are. Let me go to chat. Let's see. Ironback says, I think it's just the way something is presented, design being visual, art being others. Sint says, depends on what you mean by art, because art is about meaning and soul. It's a specific type of message, one of life and feeling, but others have varying definitions of art. Yeah, so, I don't know, what's your answer to this question, Viru?
Okay, so before I was declared disabled for work, I used to work as a trainee in interactive media design, which basically means like an interactive media designer. The way it's described here in Switzerland is someone who creates various types of media assets for marketing for a client. This could range from like between posters to trailers. And I had to learn what the difference is there. Like that was one of the first thing that I had to learn. What the difference is between art and design. And as mentioned in the chat, art can be like very different for like various people. Like it could have different meanings, similar to design. You got actually pretty close to like how you explain design. But in the most generalized attempt to explain this, art is basically just a creative expression, regardless of whether there's an audience or not. Whereas design is more about transformative information. Design is an accessibility issue. It's about whether if there is an audience or a client, if the individuals can experience said art, and what questions or like what problems need to be solved in order to experience that art. And that's the most like generalized like way to explain the difference. And no one is like I want to say no one, but like if you like observe like other people's commissioned work and things like that, no one is like at least nowadays, like it's different for back in the days for Picasso and Van Gogh and people like that, but nowadays no one is 100% artist or 100% designer. It's a scale. Someone might be like maybe 80% a designer and 20% they do want to like express themselves creatively within their design work, and vice versa. And in similar fashion, the difference between story and narrative is the same. It falls under that like art and design is the umbrella terminology. Story is a creative expression, and narrative is the concern about how that is portrayed, how that is displayed for the audience, and if it matches the the neurotypes of the audience.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. I mean, like thinking about in terms of Destiny, you have story, which is like plot elements, what's happening with this character or that character, whereas I guess narrative is more what kind of information are you trying to present to your players, like if we're talking about Destiny or something or a video game. So I guess it's similar where narrative, like, so then in that front, then narrative, what would the goals of narrative be? I mean, I guess they can be pretty there can be a lot of different goals, but like if you were thinking about narrowing it down, what would the goals of narrative be? Maybe in Destiny or in something else.
The goal would like generally be that it is made clear that the story that the writers wanted to tell has been told, with no major misunderstandings. And misunderstandings, a good rule of thumb is with no desire to add additional like clarifications like later on as an addendum, and also if it fits, a video game, for example, is an interactive way to experience story, so it has to obviously match the game in that fashion. Video games also have like a different challenge when it comes to immersion. Like for some people, like just opening up a menu can already be enough to break the immersion.
Yeah, or
But,
like
but
having
yeah,
your heads up display while people are having serious conversations, you know.
yeah,
I'm gonna take
exactly.
us to the moon, guys, by the way.
Yeah,
Six, you alright over there? Don't
Yeah,
forget.
yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, don't forget you're on mute. Okay, yeah. I mean, funny enough, we talk about that quite a lot here. Not the autism and narrative design, but I often talk about narrative design as a means of understanding and explaining why and how the story of Destiny is being told. You know, so like, well, first of all, there are elements of the narrative that don't actually have anything to do with the story, but they have to do with how that story is told. Like in Destiny right now, we're getting dialogue in public events, we're getting dialogue in radio messages, we're getting dialogue and text following quest steps and stuff like that. And that's something that Bungie's been doing for about a year and a half now, more consistently, and that you know that may still fall more into like maybe game design or whatever, but you have to change how that information is packaged in order for
yeah,
it to fit those different things. Like if you want to communicate a certain idea, you have to find out early on, like, is this going to be a cutscene, or is this going to be some text somewhere? Is it just going to be a bounty with some text on it? Like, knowing what those are will definitely shape how that like narrative and how that story is told. So I mean, we talk about we actually do talk about that quite a lot, because a lot of people they might analyze the story of Destiny from the past or from where it is now. But they also, but what we try to do here is we try to say, well, there are reasons that character didn't actually physically speak, and it's not just about the fact that Bungie has a limited voice actor budget. It might be that communicating those ideas through audio might not be, it's not the only way to do it, and it might not be as effective as some people say. Now, question before we move specifically, would narrative, like in terms of the design focused aspect of story, does that also include thematic intention, or is that more of the creative aspect?
yes, it can absolutely like include a thematic
Right, because like
intentions.
on a really short tangent, I would definitely argue that Destiny has some very strong, now that I know I can put this word here, very strong narrative thematic intention. Like, we're in Season of the Haunted right now, and people are calling it Season of Therapy, because it really is. Like,
Yeah, absolutely, because
characters, yeah.
that is something. Because if you think about it, even though Ikora, Zavala, and Cade and Banshee, all these social hub vendors have been since the launch of Destiny 1, it's actually Eris Morn who's like the first character who's been properly fleshed out, like the longest, since Dark Below. Like just like 3 months after Destiny 1 launched.
Yeah, we got her backstory before we got their backstory, kind of thing.
Yeah, and like just put in like just put it on in contrast. Like back then, she wanted revenge against Crota. Now she's grown out of that revenge. Now it's more about recognizing that, and certainly the Witch Queen campaign and its conclusion certainly helped that. Now it's more about any one of us can fall into becoming a monster, and projecting our pain onto others. And she's no longer vengeful. Like she's even like approaching the witness differently. like not with rage, but like with focus and with yeah, she's the best therapist, so to speak, because she literally went through her own nightmares in Shadowkeep, and that is like one example of how you can care about narrative design in the aspect of a character arc.
Because like I said, and we can specifically talk about Destiny or generally talk about other kinds of narrative design, but I just felt I felt like checking to make sure that element of theme was included, because one of the things that I've been most, I don't know, excited about regarding Destiny's story and their narrative is Bungie has things that they want to say. And they are communicating that through like a sci-fi fantasy space opera game. You know, like we're literally dealing with a season right now. We've gone 2 weeks, and without giving specific spoilers, the first 2 weeks of the season, on the one hand, are, oh my god, there's a giant like death-eating ship that's trying to like, you know, kill us all. But on the other hand, hey, character, you have a lot of guilt and shame from your previous life. You need to try to reconcile yourself for that, or you'll never be complete. You'll never move on from that. And it's like it's astounding to me. I need to make a video on it, but it's beautiful to me that I'm playing this game where it's like, haha, pew pew, yay! But it's also like, yeah, but real problems exist, and you can learn to tackle them together. It's like, what? Wait, what just happened? Like, did I just get taught? Like, did I just learn something? Did I just feel something? I think that's beautiful. But anyway, I could go on about that forever, but that's not the point.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's like also like another example where it's like not necessarily about themes, but more about making sure that even things like where even though you don't have to, because the gaming community is already used to it, where like even decisions that
you're talking about like
sure
inclusivity and accessibility?
Well, no, not necessarily. It's more like things like patch notes. When a patch happens, we necessarily don't get like like a narrative explanation for patches, right? Because we don't like demand an immersion for that. I can like give a good explanation for a very well thought out narrative design for just a patch rework from League of Legends. In League of Legends, there was this was like a couple years ago. There was like an event, like a pirate themed event from like it was regarding like a pirate location in the League of Legends universe, and each day there was like a lore text from the perspective of one of the playable champions, and like maybe a year or two ago, before that event, it was announced that one of the champions will get a rework, like a full rework on the ability kit. But in that event, like each day there was like a text where something was happening, like with these champions in the lore, like they were doing something, they were interacting with each other, and then there was one page where it says that one of the champions, his name is Gangplank, playable champion. In that lore text, Gangplank was he was somewhere where an explosion happened, and he was caught in an explosion. On that day, like the moment that lore text dropped on the daily reset, Gangplank was no longer available to play. for like maybe 2 days. And in the lore he was believed to be dead. And then the last lore entry, it was from the perspective of Gangplank. He survived the explosion, and he was at a he was with a black market doctor who
Mhm.
was basically adjusting his arms like with prosthetics.
Patching them up.
Yeah, and those prosthetics are part of the explanation of why he has new abilities now. He returned the day afterwards. He was playable again, but with the rework. That was the patch, and that
Oh
was
man.
such a clever narrative design. Like they didn't have to do that, but yeah, they did. And
Yeah, Toffee in the chat is saying that Final Fantasy 14 apparently has an in-universe explanation for the LFG system. And
yeah,
yeah.
Destiny has a. If you think about it, every like game, like shooter game, like action multiplayer game where you like fight against each other, all of these games you just you just like kind of have to just narratively accept that you can like indefinitely respawn.
Hmm.
But Destiny has a fundamental built-in narrative design for respawning, and that's our ghosts.
Exactly. And in chat, if anybody, if anybody is joining us who's not really familiar with Destiny, we are warriors that have been gifted with power by a very powerful being, and being able to respawn is built into the story. We die, and our ghosts, which are these little robotic things that are connected to that great power, they bring us back. So yeah, our characters being able to die and come back and being seemingly immortal is a fundamental aspect. And there's so many. I mean, like there's weapons that were transitioned over from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, but they were changed, and there are lore tabs that detail that talk about characters like questioning why it's changed. The like patch notes and when like often the sandbox of Destiny will change where it's like, oh, all hand cannons are slightly less powerful now because mechanically they needed to be, and there will be lore tabs about Guardians characters in the universe complaining about that or commenting on that. And yeah, that's an interest. Like I personally like that a lot about Destiny, that most most of the stuff doesn't have a hard time lining up with the. I mean, there's always a difference between a game and a story. Like one of the biggest differences is that our characters are able to do a lot of things on their own, whereas in the story we're not that powerful, not really, or there's things like that, or like conversely, actually, funny enough, on the opposite side, some of our favorite heroes in the game, they can use their supers like all the time. They can use their ultimate abilities like back to back to back, and we cannot. And
Yeah,
that's again the
or like do it in a very specific way,
yeah,
whereas we can only do that if we wear Saint's helmet.
exactly, yeah.
To
So,
just get the grasp of that same power.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so talking about narrative. So let's bring the two together. So how do you? I can guess how this conversation is going to move forward, but how do these two connect? Autism in narrative design.
Yeah. So when when we talked about earlier how how autistic individuals can get overwhelmed, something that Bungie has already like started doing, which I appreciate, but there are like other areas that needs improvement is when you time your dialogues.
Mm.
One example, nightmare containment. Lots of flashy things on the screen, right? Especially with the scythe,
Mm.
and everyone's trying the Solar 3.0, which is visually very very busy.
Yeah, yeah, we're seeing it on
And
screen now, chat. Yeah.
yeah, and lots of player density, player enemy density on screen, and the also new duality dungeon does there something similar where in a nightmare containment when the heavy dialogue at the end, it only comes like after it's been completed, And otherwise, it's like in between encounters, as well as in duality. I haven't played. I mainly watched streamers like play it, including you. But yeah, like these heavy dialogues from Callus, or the interaction with the Nightmare of Gaul and things like that. It's mainly between encounters, not during encounters, which is good because if it would happen like during an encounter, an autistic individual might missed it, and they might have picked on some words, and then later when they talk about lore, they might remember something but can't remember where it's coming from because they were overwhelmed at the time they heard it. And this is like the kind of things that in narrative design you have to like pay attention to and like think about. If you want to like tell a story, if you time it, are there is there, like, for example, it's an autistic individual. If is that person gonna pay attention to that, or are there other aspects in the game that might them distract from it, or and the problem with that is, well, I say problem. There are solutions. There's like a fine line. People with ADHD need like mostly an entirely different solution. Because for someone with ADHD, probably has like better like can focus better when like a more interesting thing is going on, like if it's more stimulating. Whereas for an autistic individual, it's about less stimulations, right? So where autism and narrative design can intersect is when you start solving problems about how what you need to how do you need to like look at the content you're about to deliver, and if there's things that one example, I actually, even though it's like now more accessible, like the fact that you can access Eververse from your directory, and you no longer have to go to the tower to talk to Tess. It can be like, now it's quite a lot for me personally. Like every time when I have a bright engram, it can be overwhelming when like everything is like generally on the same area. It might be more intuitive for some, but intrusive or overwhelming for others.
Yeah, I mean, like in Orbit, you just have the music of the menu music essentially. So you could go to your menu and check that out. You could even do it on your phone if you wanted. Versus being in the tower and all you hear is like all the dialogue and.
Another thing about the Orbit is also that people might miss. I am continuously aware that the Orbit screen is moving. It's a moving picture. I know it's like it's all about like immersion and things like that. But I think I would be fine if it's like a still image. Just to convey the visual message that I'm in orbit, with like at least as an option, right? It's especially if it's if it's less taxing on your system, on your hardware system.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, it's a strong thread is about how much information you can or want or are comfortable processing at a time, and it's like what. Like if you think about the human mind as a computer, like like you just said it, what is more or less graphically intensive to accommodate having a like I could see that it's wasted energy, right? Like now I gotta now, if you only have a certain amount of sensory input that you're really comfortable with, well, now part of it has to deal with the fact that the character, like something on the screen, is moving. When it's not really important for you, like, yeah, okay, there's immersion and there's a game looking great or feeling great or something like that, but it's wasted. You know what I mean? It's like being at a party and trying to listen to a conversation. The music is up. It's like, turn the music down. Like, weird example, but yeah.
And that's like, I want to like a little anecdote from what happened during my diagnosis, like when I went into the office of the expert. I walked in and then he asked me a couple of questions, and then he asked me if I what I see in this picture he has like posted on his wall. And it's like it was like a beautiful photography of a bird, or a very exotic bird. In like it's very obvious, like zoomed in and like some greenery, like among trees.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Chad, I will attempt to answer the question about autistic guardian, the potential there. So he asked me to look at this photography with the bird, like among the trees, and something that stood out to me personally was there's like a water drop on one of the leaves in the background, and that stood out to me, and I said that, I find that like that water drop, that the capture, like the photo capture of the water drop, is very beautiful. It's a beautiful capture of that moment. And then the expert asked me, yeah, but you can see the bird, right? And then I said, yeah, of course. The thing is, I noticed the bird the moment I walked into the office, because I made like a mental snapshot of everything I see the moment I walked into the room, and kind of already processed everything on the surface level. But when he asked me the question, what I see, I thought he meant more than just a bird, so I paid attention to more than just a bird. And he gave me like an example as to why he asked me that question, and this is where the communication part about autism comes in play, like the interpersonal communication. He asked me if like someone said, if for example a window is open and someone said I'm cold, would I close the window for them? And then I said, yeah, I guess, but in like similar, like less familiar situations, I would just read that as, okay, that person just wanted to tell me that they're cold. And oops, this is not where.
And this is an aspect of like neurodiversity versus not. I don't know what, I ran out of words there. But
neurotypical,
yeah. The this is an aspect that I've come to see, and is this right, give me a second. This is an aspect that I have seen brought up a few times regarding the difference between people on, let's just say, opposite ends of that spectrum, where there seems to be a lot of hidden subtext in neurotypical communication, right? Like another example is, if a neurotypical person says like, "Hey, what are you doing?" They're asking, "Hey, what are you doing? Is it fun? Can I join you?" A lot of the time. Whereas like a neurodiverse person will say, they'll be like, I don't know, I'm organizing my stamp collection.
Yeah.
And what'll happen is the neurotypical person's like, "Oh, that's a very cold response. I guess they don't want me to join." And the neurodiverse person is like, "I've communicated the information they have requested. They must be satisfied."
Exactly. It is. I felt like this is. I'm paraphrasing now, but I found like the best, like almost like pretty much best metaphor for that. Well, not metaphor. The best example of that. on Twitter, someone basically said very often when neurodivergent people talk to neurotypical people, even though there's like an open one-to-one communication, it often feels like the neurotypical person is still subtweeting,
Oh, I see.
communicating through subtweeting, even though a one-on-one interaction is happening. And
there's something secret
for
going
us,
on elsewhere.
Yeah, and that is like one of the things where it we scratch our head around, where because of the way neurotypical people communicate, we have to like second guess everything. And the problem is like we're confused as to why when neurotypical people talk to each other, why they don't have to second guess everything. And
so a question on that then.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time reading, discussing, analyzing the lore and the story of Destiny. And without the lens of considering different types of diversity or typicality, I have often run into the challenge that, I'm reading it all in English, and the English language is vague and ambiguous on its own. And with this game, again, Chad, if you're not familiar, Destiny's lore and story is told a number of different ways over a number of different types and through pieces. I always compare it to, imagine going into a library where the entire history of the universe is in that library, but it's written by many different authors. It's not yet complete, and the pages themselves are ripped out and stuffed into other books. That's kind of how I discuss that and I make a metaphor on that. So it could be challenging it can be very challenging because a character will come out and say something that seems like 100% fact, and then you have to, like, as part of the analysis, you have to read it and go, okay, they believe that to be true, or yes, that is true, but only in that instance, or no, they were speaking metaphorically, right? So now I'm curious from your perspective and from because I know you also like read and analyze lore and stuff like that. Like what pitfalls do either, from your experience, either the typical or the diverse fall into?
I actually have like a language specific example. So English is actually my fourth language that I had to learn.
Yeah. Sorry, what? No. I'm trying to learn a second language and I'm barely there. But yes, go on.
And well, the thing is, when you learn languages who have like similar etymologies, like whatever you learn next tends to become easier. If it's like in the same word branch families and things like that. But yeah, English is my fourth language, and when it comes to Destiny lore, like pretty quickly I realized I had to read the lore in English, because the writers they're English writers, they're English speaking writers. Their literary work in Destiny is English based. And the reason why, like at the beginning I read it in German, which is I technically learned it a second language, but it is now my first language. It's basically first language quality now. But I couldn't, like, reading lore in German, I had different conclusions about the story than when I started reading in English. A very good example, and this now in retrospect, funny enough, 2014, that's the year I got diagnosed with autism, and that's also the year Destiny 1 was launched. Y'all probably know the Grimoire card for about the Black Garden, the Legend of the Black Garden with Pujari, the vision he had when he leapt into the shores of time.
It's been a while since even I've read that one, but yeah, like
it's basically where he's in the Black Garden and the flowers are shaped like ghosts,
Mm-hmm.
and a voice there tells him that he is of death. Turn back. This is a place of life. All you do is kill. You're a dead thing.
Mm-hmm.
You were brought back to kill. And yeah, this is a place of life. And then Pujari's like, no, you're the darkness. You just want to deceive me. And then what's left from that is when he woke up from the dream, he still had the cut in his hand from the roses or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, funny thing about German language. In German, all nouns are capitalized anyway.
Right.
All, in the original variant of that Grimoire card, Ghost is capitalized. But I read that lore piece for the first time in German. So when I read, okay, flowers shaped like ghost. Remember, this is Destiny 1. My first thought went to Spirit Bloom on Venus. Because that was the description for me. Flowers shaped like ghost. Okay, Spirit Bloom. I didn't make the connection because in German all nouns are capitalized, so I didn't realize that in original English.
You didn't know that they meant like flowers shaped like the little allies that we have that are the little ghost shells and stuff.
Yeah, and then I can't remember why I read what made me read English lore. But when I read the English variant, like the original variant of that, Ghost is capitalized, and that suddenly has a different meaning because in the English language only the first word or official names are capitalized. So,
we used to do it in Old English, but we don't really do that anymore.
Yeah. It also doesn't help the fact that in German the word for mind and ghost is the same thing. Which is problematic.
Is that what you said?
For mind.
Oh, for mind.
For mind and for ghost is the same thing, which is a problem in Destiny lore lexicon, right?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I can see that crossover in English as well because, like, for example, spirit, right? When we say spirit in English, it could mean a lot of things. It can mean a ghost. It could mean the energy, the enthusiasm that you have. But in certain, not so common anymore, but in certain like poetic writing, it can mean your mind, right?
And
it definitely means the same thing in French, which is the other language I'm trying to learn.
And that is like another thing, trying to thinking about translation from the perspective of an autistic person as well, because autistic person as explained with the example of interpersonal communication, we tend to be quite literal. So if someone wants the window to be closed because it's cold, we'd prefer if they say it like that. If they ask,
not just okay? I'm cold, but I am cold. Can you please close the window?
Yeah, and so for example, war mind in the German variation is Kriegsgeist. Krieg means war, and Geist, in this context, mind, but it can also mean ghost. And we already have ghost as well. So so in German it's basically as if you'd said war ghost, and that is one of the main for a long time. My spinfoil theory was that ghosts were maybe
made by Rasputin or something.
Yeah, Warmind's technology, Seraph technology, especially the original shell design, kind of resemble the typical entrances of the bunkers.
Yeah, that's a theory that holds water even today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
So okay, so aside from language, something I'd like to know. Are there And I mean, you've given kind of an example, but I'm wondering if we can relate it back to a specific kind of conversation example in Destiny. But what I'm wondering is, are there what kinds of information are either not obvious or picked up in a completely different way from your experience from the neurodiverse that I should watch out for? Because, for example, I had a kind of an argument with someone on Twitter earlier today because they were using a term and they didn't realize that the term could be used differently. And I was confused because I didn't know they were using the term like by definition A, and they were ignoring definition B, and I didn't know which definition they used, and they, instead of them being, asking me or clarifying, they just thought I was being ignorant or a troll or something. So what I'm wondering is like, when we're chatting with people about the lore, a thing that we do a lot is we help to try to explain what happened, because maybe people haven't read all of it, or maybe they read it once, and not to be too mean about it, but maybe some people have read it without applying a literary degree or a literary analysis to it. It's not that my interpretation is 100% correct like all the time, but there are a lot of people out there who it's very clear that they read it in a rush, or they're not thinking metaphorically, and so I have to kind of come in and try to provide another perspective so that they can see what I'm seeing. And I'm wondering, like, as someone who does that, and as a, I haven't been diagnosed or anything, but I bet that I'm not all the way over on the neurotypical side of the spectrum because of the things that I've been hearing from the neurodiverse. I'm like, oh, I relate to that. But what I'm wondering is what things should I watch out for? What things should I be aware of? Like, you've already mentioned it. Like, if there's subtext, it can be missed. But I'm wondering if there are other lines. And chat, if you have any suggestions, let me know. Because I'm always wanting to hear from the perspective of others, especially so that I can improve my ability to interact with and communicate with others. And I just, as someone who hasn't been diagnosed, has no idea where they stand, but is probably forward-facing neurotypical, what things should I watch out for so that I don't... Because there's a difference between, like, a person who hasn't read the lore and a person who completely ingests information differently that I want to be aware of. Anyway, long question. What do you think?
There are like multiple approach to this, and it's especially unique to Destiny 2, specifically Destiny 2. This is like another, like, not to go like on a side tangent, but
yeah, go for it.
one of the what a lot of people like in the gaming community don't realize. One of the reasons, like the main reason why Sony was interested in buying Bungie was people don't realize that what Bungie managed with Destiny 2, like between its vanilla stage and what it is now, is actually like from an engineering perspective a masterpiece. Because Destiny 2 was originally released as a box product, like a finished box product that was meant to be left behind. But then over time they turn it into a live service game, and usually if you have a live service game, it's introduced as a live service game with the infrastructure of a live service game. That was not the case for Destiny 2, and you have now like this unique problem in Destiny with this franchise, and people who only started to get invested in lore like recently, especially last year, because of this like interactive storytelling, that you have now like various individuals who jump into Destiny at different times, and therefore you not only have to like now care about people with different let's just say literary career, whether that's just reading or analyzing, or whether they experience the story differently, but also with different background information, right? And how they engage with that background information, and it is like Bungie acknowledged this problem in terms of the lackluster tutorial system overall, like as a whole, not just the new light at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, even the
Bungie
season
already,
they have little lore tips on the seasonal vendor to explain how the season works, which they never did before.
and Bungie acknowledged that they're still working on a solution for new players on how they can like experience the worlds of Destiny without having to feel like, oh no,
I've missed out on years
I've-
of content or
I've-
something.
I've missed like 5 years of content. I have no context. Do I have to and that's like another problem. Like, no, this is like not a. This is not,
I know
not
where
a
this is going.
creative. This is not a creative critic on content creators. I would say it's a byproduct because of this problem that exists in Destiny. There is something wrong if the annual summary videos get longer and longer and longer. That shouldn't be the case. Now, I partly blame a little bit the lore community as well, and I was guilty of that as well, because just from the autistic narrative design perspective, the Books of Sorrow, it's a wonderful read, very beautifully written, like first attempt to like an alien race, like to empathize an alien race, like even without the context we've learned from Witch Queen. Even without that context, the Books of Sorrow in itself was very beautifully written. It had it used like relatable concepts to explain what the Hive were doing in a very like alienating way, in ways like we would never do. Very beautiful read. For new players, I would not recommend it. Not at all, because you need like different contexts and experiences in beforehand before you can actually appreciate the Books of Sorrow. And the Books of Sorrow is just it's the mainstream example, right? There are like many like various lore entries in Destiny's lore that is has the same value of Books of Sorrow to some individuals than to others. And for me, if I just to explain, like from my own autistic perspective, how I approach the Books of Sorrow, the Books of Sorrow is the first thing that made me think I've read the Grimoire card since it launched because I wanted more context about the Vault of Glass. The Vex were very fascinating, like the original, like the 4 or 5 Vex Grimoire cards, like with the Ishtar Sciences was very, very engaging. I personally still think the original Ares 1 lore from Commander Jacob Hardy's perspective would have been the perfect opening cutscene, because it ends with him saying, "And I was so glad how everything turned out well." And then I would have loved if there was a cut to post-apocalyptic, rusty old Russia, right?
Yeah.
Immediately telling the player, okay, everything did not turn out well. So when I approached the Books of Sorrow, like the first thing that intrigued me immediately was the anthem anathema at the beginning, like in the first volume, where Sathona says, "Oh, sisters mine." Because at that point, I've already read the flavor text of the Kara exotics, right? So that's the first thing. And then the next, there's a traveler. Okay, I know what the traveler is. Because up until that point, I didn't know this was about Oryx. Because the name were Aurash. Nowhere near Oryx. It was Aurash and Sathona. And like none of those people, like at that point, were references to like naming references to what I have played in The Taken King, and even when Aurash transitioned to Aurix, I still thought, okay, then maybe this is the father. Until
Yeah,
later
because
the revelation came that it's actually Oryx himself.
yeah, because
And
they weren't. There's a lot in the lore um, that is not explicit, and like
yeah,
sometimes that's fine. We talked about this yesterday. Relationships in Destiny can often not be explicit, and sometimes that's a negative because you would like
yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
representation. But sometimes it's a
Especially
positive.
especially if it's about the marginalized aspect of relationships, right?
Yeah,
Speaking of, by the way, chat, happy Pride Month.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's another, example. I read the helmet stayed on completely differently.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We've chatted
Uh,
about that one quite a lot.
Yeah, I can tell you what happened there with me when I read that. I was so focused on what was said. When he was asked to read the Tempest, and that he said he can read it by heart, and
mhm.
I thought the helmet stayed on part was still in relation to that. So what that meant was he actually didn't know it by heart, and he let the display in his helmet show the text, and he read it from the text.
That
I thought
is
that's what it meant.
amazing, and I only laugh
That's
because that is a really like creative, different approach to it. So for anybody
yeah,
listening to this later, there is an infamous lore entry in Destiny where two characters, one character essentially uses magic to summon another character to her, and she orders him around, and he kind of says, I won't be ordered. And at the end of that lore entry, there's a single line of text that says that his helmet stayed on because his character is known for never removing his helmet. And the community jumped on that one because ambiguity. Why did they mention his helmet stayed on? Well, could be like you said. It could be that he said he can recite the Tempest by heart, but maybe he kept his helmet on to hide his shame that he couldn't do it. Maybe he kept his helmet on because he always keeps his helmet on, and it's just a way to end the lore entry. Like, hey, were you curious if he took his helmet off while he recited an entire play? Because he didn't, because that's consistent with his character. The most common interpretation is that if his helmet stayed on, what came off? And the most common interpretation is that those two characters had some kind of intimate encounter, but he still left the helmet on. In fact, there's a song, You Can Leave Your Hat On, and it's that exact context of you can leave your hat on, but you can take everything else off. So, and it created quite a bit of a stir in the lore community because, well, for a number of reasons. One, because some people were interpreting in that way. Another big reason was because one of the characters had an entire set of lore books discussing how like a previous relationship that she had. So you have a character who is presented in the deep lore as being, possibly bisexual or possibly, being gay. And then you have another lore entry that seems to deny that or to contradict it. So I can definitely... That's a very contentious one. And, it's something like... Now that I think about and I understand the context of the literalness of the neurodiverse, it's just something that I want to incorporate into my into my interactions because I need I want to be aware of that. Like for example, fun fact, my fiance's French, and one of the main villains of Destiny 1, his name is Crota. Well, Crota, it has a specific meaning in French, and it definitely is not anywhere similar to the meaning in English. Crota, when you translate it, when you say Crota in French, you are saying he pooped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it is the past tense of going to the bathroom. So when you have characters be like, "Oh no, Crota," giggle from the French community, right? So they actually changed the name of the character to Kropta, so that it doesn't have it doesn't bring that connotation. So like I like to be aware of our different audiences and what they see and how they see it, not only because I want to communicate with them better, but also so that I can listen to them better, because yeah, that interpretation of that character, like reciting the lore through his helmet, I had never thought of that before. I had never thought, and we've talked about that lore entry quite a bit, but usually on this back and forth regarding relationship and intention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The fun thing about that is, even then, for a long time I thought I'm asexual. So even then, I would have still like, okay, maybe Shaq's got a massage while reciting and things like that. So many more options that in terms of being naked, that doesn't like necessarily result in that.
That's the thing. That's the thing that we all have to be very careful of, is that the lore and even the story in the game, what is delivered, they're not always explicit with what exactly do they mean. One of the problems with Destiny is that it's very rare for the story to actually be written out. And so you're interpreting it as you go, and due to language issues, to how we view and interpret different things, multiple perspectives, it's a beautiful thing on the one hand, because you've got so many perspectives. You can interpret the lore. I mean, we just talked about it. We could take a single card, one card lore entry, and everybody can interpret it a number of different ways, which just makes a rich tapestry. But it also gets really annoying when you're like, when you're trying to communicate something and people just aren't getting it, or worse yet, when they refuse to get it. That's the one that really hurts, is when you tell people like, hey, are you not aware that this word has different meanings, or there's different context here? And they insist, no, this is how it is. And I mean, I'm sure I've run into that problem myself, because there are certain instances that are more explicit. An example, they followed up actually with that lore entry. They followed up with that in the collector's edition for Witch Queen, and they specifically went further to detail what happened there. And what's funny is I had people come in and they read the first line of the explanation and nothing more, and they had stopped. And I'm like, no, you got to keep reading it, because the very next lines contradict what you're thinking. It actually says, like, it was a night of passion. It was a night of passion, discussing and sharing our love for this other person that we both mutually loved, right? So other stuff.
That's like, and that's this is where I with my autistic experience, what I would like to tell to those people, when you have a job interview, and your boss asks you what your passions are, he's not asking about sex.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's like the best example that passion can mean various things. And
exactly. Yeah. And this is what I try to communicate with people, is that there are multiple ways to interpret things. And back to the idea of narrative versus story, like what is in this case, what is Bungie's intention, right? And then I don't know. I don't work at Bungie, but there are certain cases where I have a pretty good idea as to what their intention is, because it's consistent with other things that they've done or communicated in the game. And there are times when people in the game forget that. They put their own intention on it, and it's like, look, guys, for better or for worse, Bungie and Destiny are a game that tries to push certain progressive values forward into the narrative. They try to include inclusivity, and again, they're not perfect, and there's a lot of criticism there, but you got to be aware that that is a thing that they are trying to do. So if you ignore that, you're kind of ignoring the intention, which in this case is ignoring the narrative aspect of the design, of the story of Destiny.
Yeah.
A lot of times we can guess what's happening just by looking at that intention. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, that is true. Here's where I can like not like well, something that I can inject here is when it comes to how you can like approach this like from the perspective of by the possibility that you're talking with an autistic individual. It is important to point out that the intention is very likely a neurotypical intention. And that to that person, that message has not been made, because of how they've experienced the words used differently in maybe in other video game. Bungie has this problem, or like rather Destiny. It's also a byproduct from like another issue. One thing is, the classic example is using the same word for different things, even in the Destiny lore lexicon.
Oh yeah, well our characters are on the Leviathan, and in another area in this game, a character that was the Leviathan.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the I don't know how many of y'all knew this. It is quite funny that Shadowkeep came right after Season of Opulence, given where we're in right now. I don't know how many people knew this. I don't know which lore entry this is, but that space where you fight Callus's head in the original Leviathan raid, that purple giant head, where you get teleported to, like 3 of you get teleported to.
Yeah.
There is a lore entry that refers to that place as the Nightmare Realm.
Oh yes, that's true. That is true. Yeah, during one of the raids, you fight the
giant Callus head, and this goes back to the art versus design. That space, that visually, that was probably Callus's mindscape.
Right.
Now that we know the context of from the season of the Risen, and now that we know how Mindscape looked like, if people paid attention to the background, to the skybox, very very similar to that Callus space, to that Nightmare Realm. And another thing, especially when it comes to when you try to figure out what the thematical aspect is, when Shadowkeep was announced, I was 100% certain we're gonna get a continuity about Wrestle Azir, because they're like Grimoire card, where it's one of the very early Wrestle Azir cards where he looks to the moon and he thinks about the nightmares of the moon. But nightmares is not capitalized.
Right.
But it's something that existed since Destiny 1. And so I assumed, okay, this is totally going to be about Wrestle Azir. It wasn't. But it also... it's also understandable why it wasn't. And that's because, if y'all remember, Shadowkeep was right after... It's what kickstarted year 3. And throughout year 2, during the Forsaken seasonal models... During each season, there was something about the Shadows of Yor, about that storyline, Yor and Shin Malphur. So maybe that's why, like, they already had a lot about that subplot. So, but I personally assumed, I thought that's where the theme is gonna go. It's about how the early Guardians were haunted by their fears, and it's like when you use like the same word multiple times, especially if capitalized, that can be like one problem. The other aspect of what I wanted to mention quickly is what people seem to forget. Not only Destiny is a transformative setting, so is Bungie as a workplace, including the writer's room.
Yeah.
Which it can be an issue, and I feel like there's a lot of like new writers who picked up on the literary theme of Destiny 1 Grimoire cards and actually continue it, which I appreciated. But it can be like difficult if I would say, it's very possible that some autistic individuals might notice that this is a different writer right now, but maybe can't put the finger on that fact.
Yeah, because just like the droplet, like the painting with the picture with the droplet in it, You're noticing
Exactly.
you're keenly drawn to those details that that
Yeah.
others might not be. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you want to, the answer to the question how you can like um,
Yeah,
how you
better
can like
interact with.
yeah, better interact with people who don't have the entire context or didn't pick up on the same theme is essentially in a way like kind of like interview them, like asking the questions about what they've read so far, what they've picked up on, what is the first thing that was that interested them, because in the end it is an entertainment media, and so you have to like you have to kind of know what they're interested in within this concept, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the best way how you can, especially if it comes to if it evolves into a friendly debate, that's the best way how you can present counter arguments, because you already know what they're into, and then you can pick better examples as a counter argument, because it's about it's more from the perspective of how they've got to know how they've approached Destiny's lore.
Yeah, that's
so
that's a really, I was gonna say, that's a really important point that I find funny that people dismiss. Even people who are very
Yeah.
argumentative and they have their own like, they have their own agenda or their own goal. It's like,
Yeah.
guys, you will win more arguments if you actually display empathy and consideration to the other side, because the best
Yeah.
way to destroy someone's argument is to know it.
Yeah, exactly. And the example I brought with how I approached the Books of Sorrow. The Books of Sorrow only had that big impact on me because I already knew the Traveler was a thing. So it was a very cool moment when the text said there's another moon, the Traveler. I already knew about the O noun mine phrasing, and I already knew about the Vex. And this is another thematic concept that I picked up on that I feel like no one's talking about. When the siblings Oryx, Savathun, and Zivarath split after eating from the gift mast, Oryx says that, there's the one single sentence afterwards. He says, "And then I was alone." That concept of being alone is a very familiar, it's a very it's a recurring theme with individuals who eventually side with the witness, or at least are interested in its powers, including Toland. It's also something that Toland says, at some point, that he's now alone. It fits Callus. It fits Clovis Spray Senior, mainly because he isolates himself. He basically isolates himself with his pride and and narcissism. And if you actually think about it, you can actually compare the Books of Sorrow with the Clovis Spray journals. They're almost a match. One is the religious text, the other is a scientific text. But it's both about legacy, about casting a lasting image of yourself for the next generation. With Oryx, that leads to the touch of malice. With Clovis Spray, it's about becoming the Luca. It's also very. This is something that I appreciate about what the writers are doing. How they introduce a character who's very obviously misogynistic, like Clovis Spray Senior. And in the same way, the way they explain, through Clovis Spray Senior, what Luca is, that's basically what Mara is to the Awoken. Mara fits that description. She's like the first of her kind, like the first Awoken, and all the Awoken afterwards are in her image, and it's a very funny theme. It's funny that through that writing, through the way the writers explain a character like Clovis Spray Senior, they're already also challenging his viewpoint by proving that there's a woman who already fits that bill, which is very funny. And this is like there are like many examples like that, and I'm pretty sure if like there's probably other individuals who've read the Books of Sorrow first and then read about the Anthem and Anathema and the Traveler and about the Vex, and I'm pretty sure for them the pieces that followed afterwards that they've read have a higher impact than the Books of Sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that's the advantage of the scattershot representation of the Grimoire cards originally, where it didn't necessarily matter where you start, because for each person it was unique, individual, and different in how they've come to know the lore, because everyone had a different order in which they've read the lore. And maybe like this can be, when you talk about the diversity in a community, and especially about the freedom of playing when you want to play, in terms of time. This can also be a challenge, obviously, especially for new players. I personally always advocate for a transformative tutorial that like annually, that should always end in the first mission of the expansion that is free to play anyway.
Yeah.
That is something that I like advocate for, as well as customizable UI. If you don't want a player to misunderstand the story you're telling, you have to like think about what this player might be missing on information. Even like simple things like the concept of mods or masterworking. These are only terminologies that can be understood by players who
who have experience.
Who have experience with that kind of because masterwork is a terminology that appears in other games as well, and has a similar application as well, as well as with mods or what abilities mean. Like a gameplay ability might be someone who barely played video games, or like mainly not to criticize Nintendo, that's an art direction, who mainly played Nintendo might have like a different approach to what an ability means, because for example Super Mario Odyssey, like throwing a hat into something and then have Mario turn into that thing, that's like the core thing. You wouldn't think about abilities as multiple things that a character can have if you have like a different gaming knowledge, right? So it is very, and I mentioned earlier, I want to return to what chat asked a while ago about the potentiality of autistic guardians. This is a piece of voice line that was only, if I remember correctly, only in the Rise of Iron, where for the first time it was confirmed that ghosts are neurally linked to their guardians. And obviously they don't have any, Destiny doesn't have any lore explanation for autistic guardians yet, but just based on my experience and how autism works, if you already have the advantage of a ghost being neurally linked with you, a ghost could technically blend out all the stimuli that an autistic guardian doesn't want in order to focus better. So that would be the accommodating aspect of having a ghost as an autistic guardian, is for the ghost to basically be like the lens and translator of the outside world, so that the ghost can basically maybe interact with our visuals, with the way our visual neurals work to emphasize certain things we see, or like disable other neurals so that we don't get overwhelmed. That
Yeah.
would be at least how I would handle it if ghosts can interact with that, and because there's this as I mentioned with the whole ABA therapy and the and harmful practice of the of certain organizations. It's not about autism is it's not an illness, it's not an disorder. It's more about being different and how the world is essentially designed for the neurotypical normal. And so everything you do, whether it's brushing your teeth or playing video games or telling story through video games, you have to remember that. And if you want a very specific story to be told, or to be a very specific theme to be picked on, you need to make sure what kind of, this is like another thing. Every individual has a different learning type. Your players might learn more from through audible stuff. Others might learn more through reading, and others through just watching. And if you want to convey the message that Shax and Mara did not have a physically intimate relationship, the most obvious way to tell that story is obviously a cutscene of that moment as a flashback for, I don't know, whatever the context gonna be. And that is it's obviously also very tough, because as a writer you don't want to spoil, and spoil in the sense maybe a writer does not want the community to figure out what the theme is, to surprise them. Because I have from the Witch Queen Collector's Edition, something that I've picked up on from Ikora, what she thinks about the philosophy of light and darkness. After reading that, I have now a theory that there will be a ghost for the witness as well. Because Ikora makes the argument from the perspective of the light, that light is about, in context of memory, and why the darkness remembers, why the light forgets, about breaking the cycle of violence, right? And how the darkness has the argument that if you don't remember what harm was done to you, then you can prepare, you can protect yourself if it happens again. And she then mentions, I'm now paraphrasing, I don't know what the exact words she used, but she essentially said that the forgiving the darkness would be the ultimate proving argument of the light. And when I read that, I was okay. There might be, at the end of all this, there might be a ghost for the witness, and that's where my head went. I'm now in the position. The Aldrin Soft / Crow dilemma is just a pre-alpha. The real testament's going to be the witness.
Nice.
That is my thematic theory, at least.
Nice. Well, we could dive down that rabbit hole all day, and that should probably be the topic of another stream, another conversation. So let's do the outro, because this will eventually become a YouTube video. So, all right, chat and over on YouTube, if you want to be involved with any of these conversations, either in text or audio form, you can check out the links in the description below. You can join our Discord and you can hang out with us, or you can even volunteer if you want to come on and teach us about something. There's a sign-up sheet in the Discord. You can come in, or you want to play Destiny together, or you want to chat about any of this kind of stuff. There you go. You can also catch the Twitch stream. Again, link in the description. These episodes usually they're usually streamed on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. UK time. But I usually stream most nights, so if you're interested, come on in. And yeah, that was really good. We're gonna hang out here and stream for a little bit longer, of course, but for the video, yeah, thank you, Viru, for coming in and sharing, and I think we really learned a lot about your experience and your perspective, and I think the topic is very important in
Yeah.
general, like outside of gaming and outside of our community. But I think it's also particularly important when, I mean, we're all we're all behind screens. We're all distant, but we're a strong community, and the ability to communicate and to understand each other better is vitally important when you're not able to physically be in the same space and catch all the cues that might be evident from body language and subtext. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so to end the video, thank you all very much for watching. Feel free to jump in. If you have any comments, drop them below, and I'll make sure that everybody here sees them and can respond to them. If you have any questions or follow-ups, let us know. And as always, be safe, be kind, and we'll see you all next time. Bye now. And we're clear. All right.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, chat and party. Thank you for dealing with that. It's just I like to have a clear cutoff so that I can, I can just cut the video and I'm done. I don't have to like cut out a bunch of conversation or anything like that. I wanted to go back to that question. So there's a question asked by Iron Bug Champ earlier, and Viru, you've commented on a little bit regarding autistic guardians or people who are autistic who then die and they get revived. What happens to them. Now, I will say, I have made a series of videos that essentially come at Destiny with the approach of trying to answer a bunch of questions in one place. I have a couple of videos like, can Guardians drink? Can they eat? Do they need to eat? Can they get drunk? That's all one video. I have another one that's about whether or not like they can sleep stuff, because this happens a lot. You get a lot of questions that are like, on the I haven't had the autistic one before today, but I've had the question of, well, what if you lost a leg? What if you were blind and then you died? Would you come back with sight or not? And
I have a good answer for that.
yeah, here's my answer to this. In the, I don't know the right term, the fully mobile, I don't know what the right term is, for a lot of society that might consider a definition of fully abled, meaning they have all their limbs, they all work, all of their senses, all of their organs, everything works. For that type of community, which is what a lot of people are, like, what a lot of things are made and focused through, kind of the typical aspect. The idea of being a paraplegic, the idea of being quadriplegic or blind or deaf is, even if they don't intend for it, a lot of people like that believe that those people are broken in some kind of way. And you hear this all the time. Like, watch a movie where there's some kind of super doctor or super villain who's like, I'm gonna use these nanobots to cure cancer, cure all disease. Imagine no more blindness, no more deafness, stuff like that. And the thing is, for people who are in those communities, for the deaf community, the blind community, etc., the problem with that kind of language and that kind of thinking is that they're not broken. They are differently abled, right? They have, and maybe some of them might view themselves as broken, even if they don't have any kind of like overwhelming self-esteem issues. They might say, you know what? Society is built for a vision-based person. I wish that my vision was better. Or society, this media is built for sound and I wish I could hear it, stuff like that. The problem with saying like that we're going to fix these people or that, whatever, is that you imply that they are less than or they are broken, and you are kind of, it's one thing to say, I will provide an option that can allow people to fully restore the use of their organs and these senses. It's another thing to look at the deaf community and go, you're broken, I'm going to fix you. So the reason I bring up this heavy context and I say all of this is because the way that I personally view the answer to the question of, well, if I lost a leg and then I died and I was revived as a guardian, would I have a new leg or not? First of all, we obviously don't know. The answers regarding like how the light, the darkness, the ghosts, all the stuff, how they work, what their definitions are, it's all open. And I don't think it will ever be fully closed. I think it's meant to be open for interpretation, right? Because if Bungie put out some definitions out there, if they said, oh yeah, it's going to make you a fully symmetrical, all organs functioning person, then people who, don't who don't have full use of all of their senses or whatever are going to feel excluded. And then you're going to have somebody come in here and say, well, yeah, but what good is a super soldier if you don't have an arm to shoot your gun? And first of all, I'll remind you that there are people in this community that have beaten the game and raids and soloed all kinds of activities, and they literally only have one hand. Those videos are crazy, by the way. I love watching someone figure out a way to change the controls of the game and get through the game in a differently abled way. Astounding. So my thinking comes back to what I was asking and saying about thematic intention. My belief is that Bungie has a thematic intention of inclusion and, as best as they can with pitfalls, diversity. So my thinking kind of leans on the spiritual a little bit. If you lose a leg and then you die and you come back as a guardian, the answer of whether or not you would have your leg depends on you. Does losing that leg, is it a temporary thing that happens just before your death, or is it an unfortunate accident that really hinders you, or is it an opportunity for compassion, for a different perspective, for transformation? And if the answer is the latter, then I believe that you will come back as the optimum version of yourself. And what defines optimum is a combination of what you believe to be best for yourself and what allows you to best perhaps what allows you to best achieve your destiny. There was always thoughts as that why does a traveler bring people back like that they do, and what is a traveler looking for? And the cynical view is it's just looking for soldiers. But if it does that, why doesn't it bring back people in younger physical condition? You could argue that it does that because maybe the age has given them perspective or wisdom or experience, right? So anyway, long-winded answer, but my short version of, if you have this condition, do you have it again when you come back? Without going into trying to explain how the light or the darkness works, I believe that the narrative design, Bungie's intention, and supported by the lore, is that you would come back with whatever is your ideal self. And you can be your ideal self, but be very differently abled than a different guardian. So, anyway, thoughts on that?
Matrix.
Yeah. In the Matrix, they talk about that, like your mental, your digital image of your mental self or whatever.
I believe it's more timed into that. I think the Bungie have deliberately and purposefully made the decision to leave it purposely as ambiguous as possible, because there is, to go back to the concepts of disability and how non-disabled people see disabled people as broken, which it's not an across-the-board sentiment. Most disabled people don't see themselves as disabled. There is a percentage that do. It's all percentages. But the problem is that you have a percentage of people who are able-bodied, And I'm using, and in the context of this, what I'm saying, I'm using able-bodied to mean you don't have any sort of physical or mental impairment other than what you might get through old age, right? So, no diabetes that would require medication, or, you know, you haven't lost limbs or anything like that. There is a selection of a percentage of able-bodied people who think, yeah, those people are disabled, they're broken, we should find some way to fix them. Well, like, we should try and make life easier for them, we should try and make life better for them, we should try and let them enjoy as much of life as we can. And that's great. That's really good. There is a percentage of those able-bodied people who think those people are broken, we should try and fix things, and then we shouldn't be trying to fix them, we should fix them. And the under connotation to that is, say they created a pill that could cure some degree of the autistic spectrum. Those people believe that if you create a pill that could do it, that you should make everybody that it would cure take that pill whether they want to or not. Because as somebody who's broken, they don't have the right to make that choice. They don't have the right to make that decision because they're broken, so how can they possibly know what they're missing? And if Bungie wasn't careful, they could lend credence to that argument. Completely unintentionally, we know that Bungie as a company are very against this, they're very inclusive, and they're very much a supporter of all inclusivity. But I think there's been a deliberate conscious effort to make this definition of can you or can't you have disabled guardians as ambiguous as possible, for that very reason, because they don't want to support this idea that people are broken and have to be fixed.
Yeah.
If somebody said to me, I can give you a pill that'll take your fibro away and all your pain and all the rest of it, I'm not going to lie to you, I would be tempted. It would be nice to wake up one morning and not be in agony. It would be nice to not have all the problems that come with it. I still wouldn't take the pill though.
Mm-hmm.
Because my condition has defined me into the person who I am. And maybe if I didn't have it, I would have still been the same person, but maybe I wouldn't have. But it is now fundamentally part of who I am as an individual. And if I fix that by taking this pill, I'm literally stripping a part of myself away. But I should have the right to make that choice, because it's me. This is my life. This is me living with it. But this subgroup who think all disabled people have to be fixed don't think that I'm qualified to make that decision.
Yeah.
And you find that companies that are trying to make the most inclusive of games veer very much away from this is defined, this is absolute how it has to be, and try and drift to well, we've got to make the game look like this because we can't fit every type of disability into a game without creating this monstrous thing no one can play because of sheer size, and you know, it's very difficult to fit all those body models in and create them so they all interact properly. So while games do necessity have to look a certain way, a lot of inclusive game companies kind of go, yeah, we're just not gonna say yes or no anywhere across the board. You can interpret your character in whatever way suits you and works for you. And that is, I think that is, in some ways, that is the far better approach, because I know some people with disabilities would give anything to be fixed. And I know some people who, like me, would just go, no, you're alright, thanks, I'm alright as I am. And it's all down to that personal preference. You have the right to play a game and see yourself how you wish to see yourself. So I think that's why we don't have a clear thing in this game. But it conforms, all of our characters conform to a preset body model, not because Bungie secretly think, oh, all Guardians are fitting well, but Bungie think, we've got to make a game people can actually play, and we can't create that many different body models. Otherwise, it's it's 3 years for a DLC. It's 1 year for a season before you're going to get any content. It's your favorite argument, Kaz. It's time, money, and how to most effectively spend it to produce the content needed to keep your game relevant but usable.
Yeah, I think so.
You could-
Yeah, Viru,
You
you had some more thoughts on that as well?
Yeah. One thing, I'm like more like from the I'm coming at this from the opposite end of this. Like especially in there's also like there are autistic individuals who also like, for example, lost a leg, and something that people tend to miss with the whole, the being overstimulated and things like that. There are autistic individuals who actually feel overwhelmed by having legs. They don't like walking because they don't like the sensation of it, because it's too much, especially if you add to that asthma. And so there's like also a possibility, in Destiny, with ghosts, if there's like an individual, able-bodied individual, but the ghost can already pick on these kind of things that this individual is not gonna like. For example, walking or having legs in general, and add to the fact that this is a sci-fi world. That ghost might not resurrect that person as an able-bodied as they were previously. So they might like resurrect this individual without the legs, because again, it's a sci-fi world. There are like multiple ways to like accommodate for move like mobility impairment. And another thing, in like in real life application, a lot of people seem to miss this or don't seem to agree with it, but people who need glasses, like, they're disabled. That is a disability. Like, by definition. It's just, this is like one of the very rare examples where the society actually managed to accommodate for that. Not for like blindness yet, but for short-sightedness or wide-sightedness has already accommodated for that. So to the point where people who wear glasses are no longer seen as being disabled. And
time, isn't it? It's time and technology having the ability to create the cure, not necessarily to fix you as though you were never ill, but to get you to a point where you can function.
Like accommodate so that it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, so it's not detrimental to you as an individual.
Yeah, and also societal acceptance of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have stores where you can go and just get glasses, and there's no real stigma. The only stigma around wearing glasses is people think it makes you more intelligent or less cool sometimes. But like, that's not even universal. There's a lot of times where that perspective is flipped. So I mean, back on your point, I mean, there's no reason why your ghost couldn't just revive you without legs, or they could revive you with legs, but they could dull the sensation so that you don't feel it as, like you said before, they filter it off. I mean, this is a thing. Like, this didn't happen, as far as I know, in the Destiny community, but it did happen in the Dungeons and Dragons community. In that community, one of the designers of Dungeons and Dragons, like one of the people who works at Wizards of the Coast, at the company, they came up with a rule set for, I don't know what they called it specifically, but I'm just going to call it a battle wheelchair. It was a wheelchair. Sorry? That's what it's called?
That's what they call it. Yep.
All right. Yeah, so it's a set of rules on mechanically how, like, a battle wheelchair might work and function in a Dungeons and Dragons world. and a bunch of people flipped out. Generally the wrong-sided type of people. Yeah, they thought it was stupid. They thought it was it didn't make sense because like typically when you play Dungeons and Dragons, you play an adventurer, and an adventurer, generally speaking, is an above average, mechanically, statistically kind of person. They usually are stronger or more experienced or whatever. They literally have more health. Like a peasant in a Dungeons and Dragons game can die from a single dagger, and at a certain point, even at low level, a player character cannot. Because again, there's a difference between story and game, right? Like, in Destiny, we're gods that have to get shot multiple times in the head before we die, whereas even in the lore of the game, if you get shot in the head once, you die. Like, you'll come back if you're a guardian, but... so, yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't. And from every perspective, I've chopped these people down when it comes to this ableism, as like, can a guardian come back with this or whatever? Because if you look at it mechanically, yeah, this is a sci-fi world. We can do whatever we want. If you look at it kind of spiritually, I gave my answer earlier as to why it would work. If you look at it in terms of meta intention, again, Bungie may not be the best company in the world ever, but they at least for most of what they're doing, they're working on being inclusive and progressive on that. So
they have stood up and admitted that they didn't have the best of practices all the time, that they haven't been the best and ideal.
Yeah.
They've not hidden from that, and they've stepped up and went, well, we're going to change. We are trying to actively change. But Viru's point's really good, but here's the thing, right? Look at the screen right now. We are all using the light to create a projection that has a physical impact in the real world.
Yeah,
you're sat in a swivel chair. DancingViru sat on a throne with a skull. I've got candles burning around me. As a guardian, if you didn't want to have your legs, you could use the power of the light and your ghost and just make yourself a wheelchair. That's just as resilient as anything else. Because it's implied that the weapons, the bullets we fire and the abilities we use are manifestations of the light that are real, they impact the real world. So yeah, why not?
Yeah. It's also something where whenever there's like a video game where I can make a choice about who I play as, I tend to pick like the mage type, because it fits more with my autistic traits, due to how my own physical senses can be overwhelming. So I don't like the idea of being a titan or hunter, because these two are like, in terms of like player fantasy, very physical, right? Whereas with Warlock, even like the way Warlock jumps, it's like barely any leg work, right? And also why I like picking Awoken, because if you read like a lot, like there's one very good example. It's a old Grimoire card. It is from the perspective of a new monarchy guardian who arrived at the lighthouse after like winning in trials, is a human, has an Awoken teammate and an Exo teammate, and he explained how his Awoken teammate and his Exo teammate like described how they sense the surroundings in the lighthouse. And the way the phrase is being used, like between Exo and Awoken, both like in a different way, they explain how they feel like they're being watched. With the Awoken, it is more like like a ethereal, like more a magical sense. Whereas with Exo, it's obviously the circuits and the signals, the electrical signals, right? Very likely it's the Vex that were aware of them, but like different description. For me, like Awoken is like the closest to like, to me, what it means to be autistic, because there are like a lot of context clues with how the Awoken are aware of other things than Exos and humans are. But yeah, I do definitely wish that there would be like a more explicit and like examples where you would find Tyra Khan is, for example, a guardian who no longer wants to fight, and there could be like at least as NPCs who don't have to be player controlled. You can just as a vendor. I believe Spider might be disabled. I have a feeling the Spider is disabled.
Yeah, I mean he.
It gives me that vibe. I don't think it's just out of entitlement to just sit around. I feel that more from Callus. I think the Spider might be, especially we're starting to get like since Season of the Splicer, we're starting to get I think I mentioned that in that lore panel for Season of the Splicer about the limbs of Elixnis, and there's something going on with the Spider, and to me it looks like an Elixni wheelchair wherever he's sitting on. There's also I don't know what these are called, the whatever the eye prosthetics are that Anna has.
Oh,
Anna Bray.
Yeah.
Which was displayed through a cutscene even. That's like another example. So obviously here the ghost resurrected her as she was, and that fits because Anna is pursuing who she was. That is her wish to reclaim the identity she had previously. So it would make sense that the prosthetics are still there, and that she identifies with them. Especially if you there are certain lore entries where it's explained how she interacts with her prosthetic, how she uses these implants in her eyes, and then the other example I gave, the narrative patch in League of Legends, the arm prosthetics the champion had for the new ability kit. They're like various examples. It is a little bit unfortunate because Bungie has went through a lot of transformations. The December article also highlighted unfortunate behaviors towards an autistic developer, if you remember. And there's a lot of Bungie's, at least if people are wanting, people still think sure, it is obviously it is going to be marketing talk. It has to be in the sense that Bungie has to prove yes, they are a safe space for marginalized people to interact with, and so they have to make a statement. Whether the statement is believable or not, it doesn't matter. They have to make a statement because the best way I can express as an autistic person, silence can sometimes be deafening as well. Silence can be very deafening in a sense, and it is also with Bungie. There's something that one of my first jobs I did, one of my first tasks as interactive media design. My supervisor, he knew about my autistic traits, and that one of my traits is my interest in game design as a layperson, and my task was basically to research Destiny from a development perspective. And it is only then when I realized how, I want to say naive, maybe that's a better word for it. When I heard about Destiny the first time, I was excited because I missed out on the entire Halo franchise and anything Bungie did before that. But I knew Bungie was a very renowned studio, and I was excited. Okay, finally, this is like a studio with very experienced developers trying something new. I'm gonna be there from the beginning. I don't have to catch up on anything. Not realizing that Bungie is no longer that studio, and a lot of those talents already left Bungie, whether due to workplace cultures or because some of those individuals were the problem of the workplace culture, and Yeah, it is. Bungie's a transformative studio, and luckily it's at least growing exponentially and not the other direction. It is something to consider, even in the context of narrative design. That Bungie's approach is less about what they're about to introduce. Can they maintain that forever? They're more about if they can do it now, that they will do it, regardless of whether they can maintain it. That's why every season has something unique that seemingly other seasons haven't done that well. Like the Elixir Quarter, or that's why you can like fondly look back at all the seasons. And that is, it's also Bungie does something that other studios don't allow the developers to do. Bungie allows the developers to work on whatever they want to, as long as they give like a notice in advance, so they can transition. That's why you had this. That's why we had this moment in around Beyond Light era where we barely had any new exciting weapons, and that's because most of the weapon designers prefer to work on something else, and they had to rehire new people for weapon designing, because Bungie allows the developers that freedom to be mentored in new jobs within their development team, and yeah, and this is just to go back to the fantasy about guardians being resurrected and how they're like resurrected. One aspect about the RPG aspect that I wish like Bungie would lean more into, but already started doing it. A lot of people have the I don't want to call it misconception, maybe just like the assumption that if a guardian was if a guardian in the previous life was had some sort of medical job, and if the resurrected guardian wants to pursue the same thing, has like the same interest, that this guardian will always be resurrected as a warlock due to the healing abilities, and I don't think that has to be. It has to be that way. I would say so. So for me, I would see it more like I would say a physical therapist will very likely be resurrected as a titan, a surgeon as a hunter, and a doctor as a warlock.
You could argue that a combat medic would be more titan, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. That they're like whatever they want, like depending on what the actual application is. Yeah. That's going to be essentially the class, right?
Now to jump in here, because there's some people in the chat where we're talking about this kind of topic as well. At the end of the day, with this, like with any of these lines of communication, I think Bungie has done a good job of, as annoying as it might be that things aren't in a defined, explicit box, Bungie has done a good job of keeping it ambiguous enough that you can fit whatever narrative you want into it, right? Because, for example, you just gave some decent ideas as to why a surgeon might be a hunter and a physical therapist might be a titan and whatever. But it's really like it comes down to whatever you want it to be, right? For example, in the lore, titans are both stupid brutes, and the best military strategists. Not at the same time, just different titans are one or the other. Look at the leadership in the tower. All of it except for Ikora are titans, right? And that's just a matter of circumstance, really. But like, you have titans who are like, we are soldiers, we are battle generals and strategists, and then you have other titans who are, I punch good, I punch strong, I'm strong boy, I'm strong girl. Like it, and it's the same. Like warlocks can be, described as like, I'm sensing the ethereal nature, or they can be like, you know what, I want to go out there for glory, I want to go out there for loot and treasure, adventure, or whatever. And this is a thing that I think all players need to realize, is that cliches, tropes, assumptions, generalizations, they can help, but they can also hinder. And you have to. It's fine to use them, but you have to remember that other things, the exact opposite, can exist. We were talking about in chat about why we picked our classes, right? So Titans are strong. That's what they're seen as, and generally strength is represented physically, right? I like 99.999% of the time play Titan. And I really like, in terms of how I play the game, I fit very well with the mechanics of the game. Like, oh, I've got my barricade, or I like the way that the skill set is designed fits very well with how I play. But I play Titan differently than a lot of other players play Titan. A lot of other players play Titan because they want to punch. They want to be right up front and be like a bull of destruction. I am a wall. I am the wall between the danger and my friends. I am a support Titan. And in real life, I am not big. I am a tall, skinny person. But if something happened and you had to put me into a body of a guardian, I would go into a Titan because I will be the first one to stand between danger or adversity and my friends. And you see that in the lore where they describe Zavala as actually not being a big man when he takes the armor off. He's described as being kind of a slim dude when his armor's off. When his armor's on, he's this big and impressive, whatever. And I think it comes down to this whole thing is that it's all open. Guys, I'm gonna have to jump out of here. It's getting late for you especially, but for me it's almost dinner time and I gotta go for that. But this has been a fantastic talk, Viru. I'm glad that we had the chance to. That's Badger's responding in the chat. Badger and I have very different physical builds in real life. Badger's a bouncer, and I would be more like the bartender at best. And we play Titan the way you would imagine we would based on our physical capabilities. He's very aggressive. I'm very defensive. I just find that's great. I love that ability for diversity of character. But anyway,
I also think I'm. For those who not, this is at least how I interpret it. I think Bungie planted like a narrative seed to become whatever we want to become with Fellwinter. Because Fellwinter, he displayed like Titan and Warlock abilities.
Right. Well, that's the thing is that class definition in Destiny, besides it being a gameplay mechanic. It's a combination of... like, depending on how you look at it, it's either like a societal definition or a societal definition that is shaped ability. Right?
It is something that, I personally, I never agreed with the class rivalry, and I suppose that's why I don't like Guardian games. But I was always more interested in the the rivalry between orders, because I think a Titan and a Praxic Warlock would go along well together. But I would be interested in the mindsets in a between a Titan from the Stoneborn Order and someone from the original First Pillar.
Definitely, I'm more interested in your approach. In your intended approach versus what magic you wield and how. But anyway, guys, this has been really great. So definitely have to do this often. For everybody in the chat, the whole thing is going to be up on YouTube soon. I usually get it done before the next week is over. Appreciate. I'm going to jump out of the voice chat, and then I'll say a few words to the stream, and then I'll head out. But Six and Viru, I had a good time, and I hope you did too.
Yeah, man. Catch you all later.
Thank you for having me, and have a nice one.
No worries, Viru. Yeah. Catch you all later.
Yeah, it's great, guys.
See ya.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Whew, all right. It's one of those streams where we had so many good conversations. It was hard to cut it short. But yeah, no, that was really great. So, chat, thank you all very much for hanging out and watching. Thank you for all your comments and questions and suggestions, and I hope I was able to integrate them well enough into the conversation. Sometimes it was tough because, Viru was going off on a really good point, and by the time I could get the comments back to the chat, it was like minutes later. But that's okay. I still had a good time, and I learned a lot. So, as I said, this video will go up, in a couple of days or whatever. It'll be there at some point. If you want to catch the last one, it actually went up on Monday. Link is popping up in the chat. So special thanks to Viru for being around. And again, if you, it was good to have you, Glacy. It was good. So in terms of schedule over the next couple of days, as long as things don't get interrupted in real life, tomorrow we're going to be doing some dungeons. 6 Foot Dwarf, Floofy, and I are going to do Pit of Heresy. And then Six and I may do Duality again. We need to, we definitely want to try to do the Duality dungeon in a clean, straight run rather than multiple wipes, in preparation to help people with the dungeon. And then Friday, if all goes well, we're going to be hanging out with Tower Mom. We're going to be exploring the Throne World and catching up on some of the lore, the legendary campaign, some of the secrets that I haven't finished or collected from that destination. So, yeah, kind of a busy-looking schedule. So, thanks, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your day and night. And if you want to continue the conversation, feel free to do so over on, Discord or Twitter or what have you. Toffee, thank you for making it great. Thank all of you for that. So, all right, everybody, as always, be safe, be kind. I will see you all next time. Bye now.